to live stream as I'm recording the podcast, so I'll kick off with an intro. So thanks for sticking by if you're here. Welcome to the Alleyways Podcast. This is a first episode. The first episode, you got to get down to basics. We're going to talk about one of the basic rules of all things politics, and that is to show up and know the rules. And knowing the rules of your local government, which the Alleyways podcast is going to cover, means knowing what rules your local government is following. Local governments are not mentioned in the Constitution. State power, obviously, comes from the 10th Amendment. And if you don't know, the federal government has only those powers specifically granted by the Constitution, which the 10th Amendment says. So from that 10th Amendment, where your powers are given to the states, those then trickle down to your counties and your cities. And the relationship between states and cities is different for each municipality or county. So really, as far as knowing the rules that your county or city follows is under two different ones. You have Dillons Rule or you have Home Rule. Dillons Rule was created, well, I guess it was ruled on by John F. Dillon. And if you're watching the live stream, I put a picture of John F. Dillon up if you want to see that. John F. Dillon was a United States Courts circuit judge for the 8th Circuit in the latter part of the 19th century. Well, somebody mentioned in the live stream, states have their own constitution, right? But your state constitution can't override the federal constitution. So United States Court Circuit judge in the late 19th century from like 1860s or 70s. So and I've got the quote here from his 1868 case. He states that municipal corporations owe their origin to and derive their powers and rights wholly from the legislature, the state legislature. It breathes into them the breath of life, seems a little melodramatic, without which they cannot exist. As it creates, so may it destroy. If it may destroy, it may also abridge and control. So he's saying since the states have the power to take away power from local government, well, they also have the power to decide what the local governments can do. So what does all that mean? Basically what it means as far as John F. Dillon was concerned is municipalities only have the power that is granted to them by the states. And that the powers are granted are to be narrowly construed. So that means basically if the state doesn't say that your city or county can do it, they can't do it. And any doubts about whether a city or county can do this, they're going to rule against the city or county in favor of the state. So the first major rule of Dillons Rule was an old case with Hunter versus Pittsburgh I have here. And that was when Pittsburgh and Allegheny were, they're very close to each other, and Pittsburgh wanted to gobble up Allegheny. So they held an election of all the citizens of Pittsburgh and Allegheny. And of course, Pittsburgh has more people and they want Allegheny's tax base. So Pittsburgh won the election and Allegheny was gobbled up by Pittsburgh. So under Dillons Rule, they were allowed to do that because the state granted the counties the ability to do that. So that was a major power of a city gobbling up another city through power granted by the state, and it was allowed to fly. So that kind of set the precedence of how much power a city can have and granted by the state. Now, Dillons Rule, it assumes that your state government is going to be less corrupt than your local government. which I don't know if I really agree with that. It seems like I like power to be located closer to the people. So it's easier to oust somebody on your city council than it is to oust somebody from your state legislature. And if you think about, lobbyists and everything, it's going to be a lot easier to lobby one powerful state legislature than a whole bunch of city and county officials. So I don't know where Dillon was going with that. He commented several times that he thought that, if somebody's going to state legislature, this is back when they still idolized elected officials. So he thought that if they're in state legislature, they're more educated, they must be a better person or something. They're not going to be some local yahoo that's easily corruptible at the local level. So that, as you can probably tell, I'm not a big fan of Dillons Rule, which is what Nebraska is where I live. And that's not just because I'm on city council, I want more power. I think having all your power located at the state level is kind of a stupid idea. And, any changes to city power require a lot of lobbying put out by cities and counties to get not just their elected representative at state legislature, but they have to organize against all the other state legislators to have anything done at the city level. So the counter to Dillons Rule is going to be home rule. And it's basically complete opposite of Dillons Rules. Cities and counties are allowed to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't violate the state or federal constitution. So that leaves all your power with your local elected officials. And any changes that say the state wants to limit on the cities or counties, it would require an amendment to the state constitution, which obviously is not an easy thing to do. So the whole Dillon and home rule thing kind of comes down to whether you're more of a Thomas Jefferson or a Madison fan. Madison was a big fan of centralized government, the central bank. And Jefferson was more of a Confederacy type. He wanted more power down to the states. And I think that, Dillon, there were some comments he made. I didn't put them on here, but while I was reading some stuff about this a while ago, he was a big fan of James Madison. And, he was from Iowa. Back then, Iowa was kind of a progressive hotbed for a lot of things. And, that's where he ruled on it from was, when he's on the 8th Circuit. Another thing with having a home rule government, it kind of creates city states. You have more of a free market of ideas because the counties and the cities are a lot more free to do experiments with running their government, like maybe a different form of taxation. Every libertarian loves taxation, but, different types of taxation, like maybe a land value tax. Some states that have a home rule system, they've actually enacted a land value tax, which I'll probably talk about later because not a lot of people are aware of the land value tax. I'm a big nerd for it. So I think having free market government is probably something a lot of libertarians should be interested in because we like free market systems. And, knowing how your local government works is probably your first step to understanding what they can and can't do. If you don't even know how your government works and you're living in this system, you're already behind when it comes to, wanting to get something changed. You might be trying to get your city or your county to do something. They don't even have the power. So you need to lobby your state legislature for that. Or maybe you want to change something go down to your city hall and you want them to change something. Well, sorry, they can't do it. And you just look like a fool because you've been attending these city meetings and you get up there for your big chance to speak in front of everybody, and they got to tell you, well, sorry, Mr. Joe Schmo, we can't do that. We're a Dillons Rule state and we don't have that power. So, these are just going to be quick little live streams and podcasts about how the government works. That was the first one. Next, we'll probably get into, the first part is know the rules, Dillons Rule, and show up. I'll probably talk about how you should start to show up, and we'll go from there after that. So if you like this, feel free to comment. If you thought it was dumb, go ahead and do that too. Maybe nobody wants to hear about how city and county government works. So thanks for listening.